I think today's pattern that I'm going to be working on for my flying geese and the star block is going to be my last little green ghosty. I have a lot of fun working with this color. I don't have a lot of green in this quilt. I have some, but not a lot. And today I'm going to make 4 flying geese, and I'm going to connect them to my center panel. And I'm going to use these background fabrics to make the corners. And I can't wait for you guys to follow along on that process. I am always taking my face fabric to the face of the fabric. If I did it like this, when I do my flippy corner method, I'd be looking at the back side. I want to make sure it is face down to face down. All right. Then I take my ruler, line it up from corner to corner because I'm using the flippy corner method. Okay. And then I'm going to pin the other side. Now I'm going to do this for the other 3. Okay, so I went ahead and pinned all 4 of them, and they're ready to go through the machine. So we're going to come over here, and I need this foot, the one that has the red line, not the one with the edging. I use that for the second set. Now let's scoot over and get situated. Remember, how hard you press on the foot is how fast your needle is going to go. All right, now that I have completed all 4 of the first corners of my flying geese, I'm going to remove my pins and cut away this excess string, and then I will be right back to cut off these outside corners. All right, now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line up my seam line with this little green line right here. That is a 1/4 inch. All right, now that I have it lined up, I'm going to take my roll cutter, I'm going to pull that back, I'm going to hold my ruler very firmly, and I'm going to cut that away. All right, now I'm going to do that for the other 3 as well. All right, let's go iron these open. Okay, now when you're ironing open your seams, you're going to take and use the flippy method where I'm flipping it back, but this little section for my seam line is going to stay flat. So it's going to be like this. You can see right there at the corner, the seam line is still pressed flat. So I'm going to give a slight tug on the green. Now, you can get away with just doing this on most quilts, but for mine personally, I need to open that seam line up to lay as flat as possible. Now I'm going to do that for all 4, and I'm going to starch them open because personally for this quilt, I need things to lay very flat. Now I'm going to finish the other 3 and I will be right back. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side of my flying geese. Going face down to face down. Remember, this corner right here is what I'll be keeping, and this is what we're cutting off. Drawing my diagonal line from corner to corner. All right, now that I've done this part, I'm going to go ahead and do this to the other 3 to prepare them to go into the machine. Okay, I have all 4 of my flying geese pinned, ready to go through the machine. So I'm going to be I have to be careful and get my thread out from underneath there first. Bring my foot almost all the way down. Line things up with that little red line right there. Pulling my string directly to the back. When I push my pedal, my foot goes all the way down. And it's as simple as that. Now I'm going to do that for the other 4, and I will remove my pins and cut free my excess string. Now I'm pulling out my pins and cleaning up my project. I am cutting away all these strings as I go because I feel like trying to do it all at the very end is very, very monotonous. So I'm just cleaning up these strings as I go. Now I'm going to do that for the other 3, and then I will be right back. All right, so I am going to cut free this corner. But because I'm using the flippy corner method to make my flying geese, you'll notice that this top part is lined up perfectly. But this bottom section actually has a little overhang. Now, some people would redo that. Me personally, I left it because I'm going to end up cutting it off anyway. So I'm going to lay this on my cutting board, taking my ruler. This one I'm lining up again with a 1/4 inch. I don't know if you can see that from back there, but my seam line is lined up with that first green line right there. Take my cutter, open it up, pressing very firmly on my ruler because I like to get that done in just one cut. And I don't always, but I try. Okay, now I'm going to do the last step to finalize my flying geese. I really just have to iron them open. So where they will look like this, which is the finalized look that we're going for. So if you're making flying geese for your quilt, you are almost done. Now see, I want my seam lines to look like this. So I'm gonna set my ghosties down. I'm just gonna iron it over. And there's the finalized look I'm going for. I'm personally opening up my seam lines. And I'm going to starch it flat. Okay. Now there is one completed flying geese. I'm going to iron the other 3 down to match, and I will be back once I've got those completed. Okay, so my next step has me attaching my flying geese to 2 background fabric squares. It is this strip right here. And then I'll take the other 2 flying geese and attach them to that big green panel to make this other strip right here. So I'll have 1 strip like this and 2 strips that look like this. 1, 2, 1. So that they make up a big star pattern when I'm done. We're in the home stretch. So I'm going to take this flying geese face up with a piece of my background fabric face up, putting my faces to touch, and I'm going to pin at each corner, like so. Just so when I'm running things through my machine, it all stays nice and even and where I want it. Now I'm going to do that for the other 3 sides, and I will be back in just a moment. Okay, I have got those pinned and ready to go, but I'm going to go ahead and prepare this one as well, because I am changing the foot out on my machine to be this one, so I can keep that 1/4 inch seam line. Previously, to achieve this 1/4 inch seam line, I've just been using my ruler to cut that 1/4 inch. But for this next section, I have to actually sew at a 1/4 inch in. So I need to have this specialized foot, which I've shown in past videos, but this is a very cheap little foot that makes my life so much easier. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just take this foot off, pulling it forward. Just gonna set it to the side. Normally I put my feet away between uses, but I am constantly switching out between these 2 feet for this project, so I'm just going to set it right there for now. I'm going to take my flying geese, and remember, you want face up to face up. If you have both your faces going the wrong way, when you spread this out and fold it over, it would be faced the wrong direction. So I'm going to make sure this flying geese is face down on top of my project, and it is in a V or an arrow pointing at me. And again, I'm noticing that this is just ever so slightly off. I have a little overhang at each corner, and I'm going to hide that in the seam line of my project. That way you really don't see it. Now, most people might redo this, but I am just going to hide it in the seam lines, because in the long run, you really won't be able to see it on my project. Now, if at the very end I'm off by multiple inches, we all know why. And I like to use 3 pins to pin this down, 1 at each corner and 1 in the very center. All right, now I'm going to do this other side, and I will be right back. Okay, now I have all 3 ready to go through my machine. I'm going to do all 4 sides on my flying geese, and I'm going to do along the sides of my big pop panel, so I have 6 lines of stitching to go. I like to get my finger pressed down on the fabric right here before I pull out a pin, so I'm holding things where I want them with my finger. And then I bring my foot down and I line it up. I'm not bringing my foot all the way down yet. I'm bringing it part of the way down. Now, if your machine is a manual, it might be a little bit different for you, but I just press this button to bring it almost all the way down. And I can push this to bring it the rest of the way, or I can use my pedal and press my pedal, and it will bring it the rest of the way down for me. Okay, now I'm going to do my last 5 lines, and then I will clip the ends off and iron them down. Remember, how fast your needle moves is based on how hard you're pressing your foot. So I'm barely pressing right here, and this is me giving it a little bit more gas. It's just like driving a car. The harder you press, the faster it's gonna go. I really spend the least amount of time actually sewing compared to pinning, ironing, cutting off things I don't need, cutting up my fabric. That is the most time-consuming part of quilting. All right, now I just have this big center panel left. Now, as I approach this middle piece right here, where I have my open seam lines, I like to take my scissors and just press it flat so it can go underneath my foot without problem. They do have a special tool for that. I don't have one. I just use my scissors. And for my last seam, ooh, that was a little fast. Okay, now I'm going to clean up all of the edging on this. You'll notice that even along my flying geese areas, I have a lot of stray fabric. I'm gonna go ahead and clean all that up on all these pieces, and then I will be right back. As you can see, cleaning up the fabric as I go along through the project makes a pretty big difference. It went from being very scrappy with a bunch of flyaway threads to just very clean, even lines for me to work on. Because I am going to be using every side of this fabric in the long run, I want to make sure my project is staying as clean as possible throughout the process. Now I'm going to go iron all of these open, and then I will pin them together to build my star pattern. You can already see it starting to take shape. This is my favorite part, where you start to see the star coming together, and I'm going to start playing around with how I want my big finalized quilt to look, because this is really all that I have left. Oh, pardon my tool. This is how I sew hands-free. Comes in very handy. But I only have these left, and I had so many to begin with. So I feel like I'm just making crazy amounts of progress on this quilt. And I only have a few big stars left, so I need to start getting an idea of my layout ready. So exciting. Okay, so to iron all of these open, I'm following the same principle to open my seam lines up to be like this. I'm simply going to leave these like so, taking my iron and running it along the seams. I wish this was a project where I could get away with just doing that. It would cut my ironing time by down to a third of the time. Unfortunately, that is not the case for this one. And each project's just a little different. So we'll see how future projects end up going. See, I am a Halloween lover. Some people adore Christmas. I could do spooks year round. I love Halloween, but I'm also a very girly girl, and I love pretty pastel-y colors. So finding this fabric, this package is called Hey Boo, like B-O-O, like boo, by Madonna, M-O-D-A, Moda. I'm probably saying that wrong. But she makes some really good high quality fabric that is just so cute. And that is who this collection is by. And the pop panel is actually the pop panel that goes with this kit. or well, this section of fabric. I'm not really sure how you would say that. I have some of her other collections in my sewing kit, or in my sewing drawer, just waiting to be used. All right, now I'm going to pin, sew, and iron the last section of this square. I've got everything all set up. Now you can see that my quilt is ever so slightly off right here. I'm going to make sure when I line this up, seam line to seam line, that this actually overhangs a little bit to make it disappear. That is where I was saying I was gonna hide where I was slightly off in my seam lines. Now, because I am slightly off, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my seams. So instead of doing things at a 2, I'm going to tighten them up to be at a 1.5 so that these are actually closer together, forming just a tighter little line right there, just to hold things together a little better, since it won't have as much of a seam to hang on to. Now this is really handy. This is where I'm hiding the little bits that I messed up. I am no pro quilter. I'm not perfect. I am definitely learning as I go. My mother-in-law has been quilting for many, many years and has some really cool projects. If you guys would like me to show you some of her projects, just let me know. I will pull some out and show you guys. She is amazing though, and a wonderful teacher, giving me the confidence and ability to show you guys what I'm working on. Again, I'm a little off over here, so I'm gonna hide that in my seam lines. I line my seams up right here. You can see that they're as close as I can get them. I like to pin at both seams first, and then I like to do in the middle of the flying geese. So it was ever so slightly off on both sides, and I've had to hide that by just offsetting a little bit on each side, making sure it's still the dimensions that I want my finalized star to be. Okay, now we're gonna run this through the machine and iron it out, and I'll be all done. Okay, remember, you always want to start holding that string back there. Never sew over your pins. That is one way to upset your machine so fast. All right, one more line to go. And we have almost finished another star block. Oh, considering I had almost 50 of these originally that I had to make, I feel like my progress is just flying by. Okay, Let's clean up these edges and then we will go iron it out and we will have another completed star block. Okay, the final step on a star is always my favorite part. It's just a little bit of ironing. And then I think I'm going to pull everything out and arrange my stars and kind of start getting an idea of how I want to lay out the pattern for my final quilt. Oh, this is so exciting. All right, we just got to get these seams opened up, and you can see where I hid my error right here, how one side is just a little shorter, which is why I tighten up my seam lines, just so that that's not an inconvenience and doesn't cause fraying later on throughout the project. And you can see it happened on all four corners, but that's okay. I was able to hide it pretty sufficiently, and you can't tell from the front, which is what I was aiming for. Just means when I open my seams up, one side's a little shorter than the other. But that's okay, you can't tell. If I hadn't pointed out my flaws, I'm not sure if you guys would have been able to see it. There's a little thing my mother-in-law likes to say, if I would have never known had you not told me. It's a little secret with quilting. If you don't tell, how are they gonna know? How are they gonna know? And there we go.